Welcome back to the Spiritual Ride podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa LeBlanc, and I'm super excited because I have a really good friend who is a transformational coach on the episode today. Tasha Triana, how are you doing today?
Yay! Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm good. The sun is shining. You know how important that is for us in SoCal.
Yes, we are both in Orange County. So let me
Yes.
tell you a little bit about Tasha. She is a former nurse turned subconscious transformational coach. She is the host of the new podcast, Next Level Self, which I just listened to it this morning, and it is amazing.
Yay, thank you.
She is a Reiki practitioner and a hypnotherapist.
Yes, that is me.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you. We haven't been friends very long. However, every time we've hung out or I've gone to one of your events, I have had a shift, like a major up level reawakening, dropped into parallel universes, that kind of thing. So I really wanted to ask you about your work, see if you can share some things with our listeners of how to step into their next level self.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I was very excited to have this conversation with you. And yes, as you mentioned, we haven't known each other for that long, but we have so many parallels. We're in alignment in so many ways, and it just makes sense. I feel like that we're friends, that we were drawn together, that the universe put us together, and I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, let's dive in. Where should we start?
So, first of all, you were a nurse and now you are a transformational coach. Did a spiritual awakening happened? What happened to make you make such a dramatic shift in your life?
Yeah, good question. There were a variety of things, and I think it's not just one thing, but the pieces were all kind of there. And there were definitely spiritual awakenings, multiple spiritual awakenings that happened on my path. I would say the first one, honestly, was when I was a new nurse. I burnt out really hard the first year of my career. And I mean, the medical world, in some ways, it's shifting, but there is a really big work hard, play hard mentality. I was working the 12-hour shifts, and as a new nurse, at least in my experience, and I know speaking to friends and other people who have been or are in the medical field, the first couple of years are really stressful because there's a lot, a lot on the line, and you're still learning your way around. You're still learning what to do in emergency or really urgent situations. And so your nervous system also is very taxed. And I just didn't understand the true importance. I did in some ways of really prioritizing myself, and I would eat healthy and exercise, but really allowing myself to decompress from the hospital and take time to actually rest and replenish and just process some of the things that happened really contributed to me burning out early on. And that was a big wake up call. It was really challenging actually when I went through it, and it really caused me to take a deep look at my life and look at what were the things I was doing that were like what was lighting me up and what wasn't, and what was I doing that maybe wasn't serving me, like over giving, overextending myself, overstepping into the caretaking role. And so, like I said, it was really challenging, but it also was a big catalyst for me in beginning to learn how to prioritize my well-being on like the emotional level, spiritual level, physical level. And yeah, it was a really big moment for me to make a big shift. So that was one. And then in 2017, I also had a really big year. That year, my grandma passed away, my mom's mom, who was someone who was really key. Both my grandmas were really key people in my life, and that hit me really hard. And then I had a cousin pass away. I had a lot of family dynamics come to the surface. I moved. There was just a lot of chaotic times, I would say. And that really opened me up in many ways. I also was with my grandma at the time she transitioned out of the physical dimension into the spiritual realm. And still to this day, even as a nurse of almost 10 years working in the hospital, she was and is the only person that I've actually been with at that time. And that in itself was such a huge talk about spiritual catalyst. And I feel like that was actually a gift that she gave me, because it really, I always knew like there's something more, we're connected to a higher power. But that, even now, I get goosebumps as I talk about it. Just the way it was orchestrated and how it unfolded, it just really opened me up in a way that I wasn't expecting. And from that, of course, synchronistically, I got connected with an energy healer, and I started to apprentice with her because it was just so interesting to me and I was so intrigued. And while I was working in the hospital, I would work with her once a week to just understand more about energy, having a business, what it was she helped her clients and patients with. And that was so fascinating. And that really was a big like gateway for me to then really start tapping more into my meditation practice, my yoga practice, everything from there just kind of snowballed.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I know a lot of people that are coaches or are wanting to be coaches, and like you went from success to success. I feel like a lot, I don't know if it has to do with the hypnotherapy or the energy work, but there is a lot of people that have this calling to want to help people, but I think that they have limiting beliefs where they can't quite make the transition into their next level. What helped you make that such an, it seems like it was an easy transition. Maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, it was. I think maybe on the outside it sometimes looks easy, or maybe because we only see the outside version, of what people are going through. But it definitely wasn't always easy. And there were moments, even though what I do now seems such a natural fit and I truly love it and feel so fulfilled with what I do. And in all the careers I've had and all the ways I've shown up in the job sector, and even now I don't really consider it a job because I love it so much. It's more like a passion. I've always helped people. And so that's something that's always been really common to me. But as I was just really prioritizing myself, learning more about myself, and starting to uncover who I truly was, I realized, and also understanding more about the healthcare system and some of the values that actually didn't really align with me and who I am and what I believe in. I started to shift. And I knew, honestly, in 2017 that at some point I would be leaving the hospital. And even if I go back, when I decided to become a nurse, already had an intuition that I wouldn't always work in the hospital, but for some reason, I knew I needed this experience and it was part of my path. And I'm honestly so grateful for the experience because it helps me in honestly everything I do. And I feel like it gives me a very unique perspective and I can help bridge science and the woo woo, as we like to say, or the spiritual world. But I knew in 2017 that one day I would leave. And it took until 2021 for me to fully make that jump. And I was really laying the foundation, starting to create my business, work with clients one to one while I was still a nurse. So the process was quite gradual, I would say, as I started to shift and become that version of myself. And then I finally left in May of 2021 after having left one time in 2020, right before the pandemic. And then once the pandemic hit, I did go back into the hospital, which was really interesting part of my path. And I think it gave me a different kind of clarity, even though it was really hard, very stressful, a lot of anxiety, as we remembered that time, was just full of that energy. I think that it was a necessary part of my path. And it also gave me, as I mentioned, just that clarity that, yes, I was ready to make that jump. But to your point, a big piece of me making that final jump was really tapping into my future self because I was so identified and connected with the role of a nurse. Like that was my identity. And in society, when people ask, especially here in Western culture, it's like one of the first questions we tend to ask someone, like, what do you do? And so I would say, I'm a nurse, and people, oh, that's great. And, I'd get that good feedback. And I didn't realize, oh, yeah, my ego is kind of connected to that good feedback that I'm getting. And I wasn't yet solid in myself to say I'm a coach or I work in transformation, or I didn't feel that yet. I felt like an imposter still in many ways. And so that is actually when I started to work with a hypnotherapist myself. And once we had a session and I talked all about my future self, and she created a guided hypnosis that she led me through, and then I got to keep the recording. But once I listened to the recording a couple times, I just thought, I already teach meditation and this is the world I kind of want to move into. So I started making my own recordings and doing self hypnosis, and that honestly really helped me shift. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping other people really shift their identity, because at the core level, that's one of the best ways and fastest ways, not that it's a race, but to really create that deep, long lasting change.
So I really want to talk about hypnotherapy, and because what's so interesting about your hypnotherapy is when I've been in it, it almost seems like you're just talking. But every time, I think I've had maybe 3 times I've experienced your hypnotherapy, it seems like you're just talking. You're like, breathe, and then you're walking us through something, and my ego's like, nothing's going to happen. And I've had a shift every single time, and it makes me emotional. What are you doing? Are you doing something energetically? Is it the words you're saying?
I honestly, it's both, but energetics is a big part of it, and that is what makes my hypnosis and hypnotherapy sessions quite unique, I will say, because as a Reiki master as well, and having studied energetics for many years, I love to combine modalities. So that's also something I'm weaving in, which provides a deep clearing and healing. It helps align the chakras. And so, in addition to going in subconsciously, when you're in that relaxed state, of having a hypnosis session, you're more open, your subconscious mind is more open and more susceptible to new ideas, to creating change, because our subconscious mind, it really wants to keep us safe. And how it defines that is the familiar. So anytime we step outside of what's familiar to us, it doesn't like that and it wants to keep us in the same place. And so as I guide through a hypnosis, it's very similar, I say, to meditation. However, hypnosis tends to have a certain focus or theme, whether it's inner child healing, future self, which I love so much. And so just being able to guide through the process scientifically too, it when you're in that relaxed state, your nervous system moves into a more rest and digest state, which allows you to learn, to grow, to heal. And it also shifts your brain waves into a slower state that also allows you, again, to take in new information. So it is a combination of relaxing the body, of being open and susceptible to new information, and then also me weaving in the energetic piece with it as well.
Are you doing that consciously? When you say energetic, I know that you've come around and I felt you moved. It was
Yeah,
weird. I think one time I said, I felt you pulling like the past out of me, and I was like, what the hell just happened? But
right.
even when you were just talking before you did the Reiki, my ego was like, nothing's going to happen. Are you doing something energetically with an intention when you're speaking?
Yeah, it's the energy that I work from, I would say, more than any
Okay.
way, or the best way to kind of simplify it is I go in with the intention of healing, growth, transformation, creating a safe container, because safety is, at the end of the day, one of the most important things. I would say it is the most important thing, because if we don't feel safe with who we're working with in a certain situation, we won't be able to grow and to heal and to expand. So I do hold that container energetically by just putting that out. And I'm not necessarily saying that, but sometimes in group settings, you've been in a couple of group workshops, and I do say that as well, and really create the safe space first, letting people connect. And whether I work with people individually, one to one, or in a group, that is something that I really strive to create. And a lot of people do reflect that back to me, that they do feel really safe. And I would say, again, like that is the key element in being able to grow and heal and change.
That makes a lot of sense. And what else is really interesting is looking into your incarnation cross and human design, which for anyone that's not familiar, human design, sort of like astrology, and your incarnation cross is the theme in your life. So I looked up Tosh's and it literally said it's the right angle cross of the Sphinx. And it says people pass through your life when they need to make a change or find a new direction. And you didn't even know that. And I thought that was
No.
so interesting that your life path is transformation. And that's like what you were guided to do. And just how all these things are, it's like we have this purpose this whole time before we're even born. But I think not everyone, I think we all have a purpose, but sometimes we don't all fulfill it. Was there something that happened besides, I know you had spiritual awakenings, but what do you think sets you apart from being someone that is living your purpose versus people that really want to but struggle?
Yeah, and thank you. Good questions. And thank you for reflecting that back to me, because I didn't know any of that until you recently shared. And even when you said it now, I got goosebumps again. I'm like, wow, it's just so on point and very me. And I would say that we all have a certain energetic, I'm so passionate about authenticity and who we came here to be. And we have a lot of conditioning in the world telling us who we feel like we need to be or who we think we should be. And part of what I teach and what I stand for is really teaching people how to get back to their true essence, their core essence. And purpose, it sounds like such a big thing for a lot of us, but I would say it really is leaning into a life that is really fulfilling. And that could be something, like in my realm, transformation. It could be someone who's making their art. Maybe they're making these like amazing paintings and people go and see it and they feel a sense of beauty and wonder and awe. There is no, in quotes, like right or wrong purpose. It's something that brings you fulfillment. It could be going to walk by the beach and then your energy is shifted and then you bring more kindness and peace to people. Like, I don't think there is one specific way it has to look for any of us. And I would just invite people to, one of the things I love to say is follow your curiosity. What are the things that light you up? And if you don't really know, that's okay. There's always time and space. You can always start a path of self-discovery and self-awareness. And I truly believe also why I'm so passionate about prioritizing the relationship to the self is once you make time for yourself and really prioritize yourself, you start to understand, who am I at my core? Who am I? What are the things I enjoy? What do I love to do? What do I maybe not like to do? Because sometimes we don't know that stuff. And so for me, as I mentioned, nursing and other careers I've had in the past, they've all had to do with helping people. But now I really feel like I'm in my authenticity in the way I help people. And I'm always growing and evolving. And transformation is something that I would say honestly has always been important to me. Of course, I probably didn't use those words when I was younger, but it's, just the magic of life and being able to change and pivot, and we're always growing and evolving, and who knows what I'll be doing in 10 years. Maybe it will be a little bit of this, but maybe it's also evolved into something else. And I think for me that's what makes it exciting and makes life a bit of an adventure. And so I would say it's all within us already. It's just a matter of really taking that time to get to know ourselves and start to uncover who we truly are.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
So another thing I wanted to ask you, because you, along these lines of transformation, I know you talk a lot about how important it is to move things out of your body. And one time when we were hiking, we were talking and I dropped into a parallel universe for a couple seconds where the problems I was worried about that I was discussing with her were gone. Her and I were both at like next levels of what we're creating in our lives. I could tell that I looked different. I had different clothes on, and then I dropped back in, but I felt better. What sort of magical energy thing? What is your thoughts about what happened that day?
Yeah, yeah, good question. And thanks for sharing because I felt like it was a really powerful moment. For me, I mean, of course, mind, body, spirit are all important. And I feel when we are in alignment with all of them, really that's when magic happens. And when we're in the present moment, that's when magic happens. And I think being again in a safe space, we create safe space for each other when we're on our hikes. I feel like they're like our adventure hikes. We're hiking, we're talking, we're sharing, we're also manifesting because we're using our words to create what we desire. And so we're both creating space for each other to share maybe some of the things that we're feeling stuck with. But as we're physically moving our body, it's like we're alchemizing that energy, we're moving it through our system. And then as we clear that out, we're also connecting with the vision, the higher picture, the future self. Again, like we were speaking out the words, really wanting to create. We're both generators in human design. So I feel like us being in that really generative energy is so nurturing and soul fulfilling for both of us. So I believe that when you are truly in the present moment, you can collapse timelines, you can create at warp speed, like things just drop in. And again, it's not like it ever has to be a race. Things do happen in divine timing, but those are the moments when we see really, like in quotes, crazy shifts or things just drop in. And I know for both of us, whenever we go on our hikes, something usually manifests for both of us after. And it's
Yes.
always really interesting because we have really shifted the energy. And it's so true. We hear a lot of people in the spiritual space or even coaches and people who also work in transformation shift your energy. And that's a game changer. And I would even say start with the energy and then see what shifts. But often we work backwards. And that's the way we're conditioned, do the structure, do the strategy. But really, if we can shift the energy first, then everything else follows.
It was so interesting because it was really gloomy when we started hiking, and we usually go one direction, and we made a conscious choice to go left. And then by the end of
Yes.
the hike, like the sun was out and we had like
Yeah.
shifted the energy, and I was just buzzing. It was just like, and
Yes.
that has stuck with me. That was like a month or so ago. Is when
Hmm.
I'm stepping into my next level self, it's like reminding me that that version of me is existing and I can connect with
Yeah.
her. So that was like really powerful.
And it gives you a different perspective, right? Of kind of what you said. You were like, when I connect with that next level version of myself, because she's already elevated, she doesn't have the problems or the struggles that the past version had, because she's elevated past that. And why, again, I'm so passionate about future self, next level self, because sometimes as humans, we just get in our own way. We have blind spots. We can only see so much. But if we're able to channel even just like us tomorrow, sometimes that's enough.
Mm.
For us at the end of the day, it's like, how would she feel? How would she show up differently? What would she do? And that is enough to put us out of the, chaos of the mind sometimes, to have our intuition pop in, or to just connect with, oh, you know what, this thing I'm worried about is actually not a big deal, or this is how I can handle it, or this is, it just gives us insight and perspective.
Yeah. That was another one of your workshops. I think it was right before fall or something. You said, how do we want to feel after?
Yeah.
And I like saw myself as like wearing different clothes again, and again, not bothered by stuff I was bothered by 3 months ago.
Hmm.
So, talk to me about Reiki. Can you explain what it is, what you learned, any sort of, because I've had Reiki done a couple times and it felt so cool, and I almost was like, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know that much about it, and I think a lot of people don't.
Sure. Yeah. Reiki is a type of energy healing modality, and there's different modalities out there in terms of energy healing. And when I first apprenticed actually with an energy healer back in 2017, she didn't necessarily have like a certain line that she studied, but she was very, very energetic, very intuitive, very gifted. She was a really powerful healer. I learned a lot from her. And then when I moved to San Francisco in 2018, I started to formally get trained in the line of Reiki, in Usui Reiki, and there's different types. And basically the idea is that when you get trained, or you get attuned, is kind of like the way of saying it, you get attuned to certain energetic symbols, you then become a channel for this universal energy. So it's not necessarily so much about me, Tosh, as a human, it's about me being a vessel to channel the energy through. And everyone is an energetic being, like we're all energy at the end of the day. And so having these attunements to this really, high power energy, I'm able to work with someone, and the energy, it's not necessarily that I'm doing anything, but I'm serving again as a conduit to help the energy channel through. And we're all intuitive. I always say we're all intuitive. Even if you feel like you're not, you're
Mhm.
intuitive. It's just a matter of learning to develop that relationship and that gift, and learning how to hear it, receive the messages, and then act upon it. But basically, the energy will go exactly where it is needed. It helps heal, it helps clear, it helps align. And it's always so fascinating. No two sessions are alike. Like we could have multiple sessions and everyone would be different. But I think of one client who's now a friend, and this was back when I lived in San Francisco, probably, gosh, in like 2018 or 2019. And she came in for a Reiki session, and she was feeling really stuck in her life. And she was kind of at a crossroads and just wasn't sure what decision to make. And so she came in for a session, and we pulled a card, we kind of talked about her intentions. I checked in with her chakras to see what were out of alignment and where we would kind of focus. And she just had this massive clearing in her solar plexus, so in the middle of her stomach. And after the session, she was so clear. It was like she knew exactly what to do. We were able to unblock the energy there. It became flowing. She was connected with, we could say, her gut, her confidence, her self trust. And in that moment, she knew exactly what she needed to do. And from that place, her entire life changed once she made that decision. So it was really powerful. And that's just one example, but it's a really powerful modality.
Wow. And is it just when I experienced it, it was like someone not putting their hands fully on me. It's like something you're channeling the energy through your hands.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There's different ways of doing it. It depends on the practitioner, but traditionally, yes, it's like a hovering above. Sometimes I will use light touch too, just depending on the person, the client, if that's something they're open to receive. Because I also believe, as just like human connection, we do need touch as well.
Mhm.
So maybe it's like putting hands on the head, or even above like the third eye. Whatever, I use my intuition a lot, just feel in terms of the other person I'm working with, where they might benefit from it. And it's really interesting because sometimes I might be hovering above someone's stomach, and later they'll say, "Were you by my head?" And I'll say, "No, not at that moment. I'm by your stomach, or I'm by your feet." So again, it's just really interesting. The energy will move how it needs to. And again, like we're so intuitive and there's a higher power within us. It's like we don't think about our lungs breathing or our blood circulating, it just does it on its own. And so ultimately, our body wants to be in a healed state and in homeostasis. And so when we can kind of help move these blockages, then everything begins to flow in the way that it's supposed to.
And once you are attuned, are you like attuned forever?
Hmm. Yes.
So you just reached a level of some sort of connection.
Yes. That's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
And do you have to do something to get into that energy to do a Reiki session, or because it's already there, you can just do?
Yes, I think every practitioner has like their different ways of kind of going into a session. There's definitely, you can connect with the symbols or certain symbols that you get attuned with that you learn based on the different levels. And then I also set a specific intention for either the client I'm working with or the group I'm working with. And I set that. And sometimes, it's even just holding that energy. Like if I'm doing a group Reiki session and say the group is really big, I don't even necessarily need to touch every person. I just energetically send out that energy to the room, to the field. And once you get trained in various levels too, because energy is not restricted to time and space, you can also send energy to, say, like I have a friend traveling, and I could say, I'm sending Reiki to your plane for safe travels. And then it's like kind of like a protection in a way. And one time I did that to a friend who where was she going? I think she wasn't, oh, she was going to Burning Man. That's what it was. And I sent her a message and said, sending Reiki to your bus, and they were taking a bus from the Bay Area. And then she said, "Oh my gosh, right when you sent that message, they pulled me and my friend out of our line and we got to go on a new bus and we like sat in the front." And I was like, "Oh, it was super cool, really interesting." And she was like, "Yeah, it was like right as you sent that." And I was like, "Wow, interesting." So again, it's like we probably all have examples for those who are like, "Oh, I don't know, this seems out there," where we think of someone and then they call us. That's an example
Yeah.
of being connected energetically. So, again, energy is not bound by time and space. And in the practice of Reiki, you also learn initially first, when someone is physically in your space with you, and then you learn how to do it no matter time and space, which is why I can also do Reiki virtually. I don't have to be with someone.
Have you ever done it on anyone's past selves, like inner child Reiki?
Yes, inner child Reiki, good question. I was like, past selves. Yes. Whenever I do hypno sessions, I always weave in Reiki, or when I do meditations, I always weave in Reiki. And so if it is an inner child healing, or we tap into a past version of self, maybe it's not even inner child, maybe it's like some version of you in your 20s, or you're feeling
Yeah,
resentful, or whatever it might be. Yes, I always infuse it into what I do, which is what makes it powerful.
totally. So, do you have a morning routine? And what is it?
Yes, good question. Actually, this morning, it's funny you asked this. I was thinking like, it might be requiring a little bit of shifting for the morning routine. But yes, my typical morning routine, the things that are non-negotiable for me, no matter what, are my meditation and my journal. Like no matter what, those are the two I always do. So usually as soon as I wake up, I'll place one hand on my heart, one on my belly, just connect with my energy for a moment. And I just say, I love you, Tosh, to myself and just send myself that energy. It's really simple. It sounds like, does that even do anything? But yes, it does, especially because first thing in the morning, that's when you're primed to receive. It's when your subconscious is most open to change, right when you wake up and right before bed. So I definitely capitalize on that time in the morning, right when I wake up. I'm like, yes, this is the time. This is the sweet spot. So I use my energy in that way, and then I go straight into my self hypnosis. So I'm doing one right now. This is what I typically do. I have done for the last several years. It's Future Tosh. And so every year at the end of the year, I will write down what I see myself having completed in a year as if I've already done it. I journal on it and then I record it and I listen to that every morning. And yes, now that we're in November, I'm like, ooh, a lot of these things have really manifested this year. And it's just really cool to see that shift. And so I do that. And then I also do some journaling and then I do movement. So those are kind of like my core pillars in the morning routine. How about you? What do you do?
It's interesting you said that because my for the last year I've been doing dispenza. Like I
Mm,
have to meditate, I have to work out except like on a rest day, which I force myself to do, which is my own stuff. But yeah,
yes.
movement, meditation. But you know what's weird? And this is actually an interesting question because having to do with neuroplasticity. So
Hmm.
oftentimes, I know, like, even in people's human design charts, there's different, some people are meant to be consistent, some people are meant to have a routine, and I'm definitely one of those people. But sometimes I'll be doing a certain visualization or a modality and I won't want to do it anymore. And I'm not sure if it's that I'm getting close to a breakthrough or if it's just that I'm bored. And that's what was
Hmm.
happening with Dispenza's. Like his meditations are like an hour and I feel great afterwards, but sometimes I'm like, it's so long, or I didn't manifest what I thought would come in by then.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on, like, because we both met doing TBM work, which
Hmm.
I did for a couple years, and they really talk about neuroplasticity where you have to do the same thing kind of every day. What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm. Yeah, good question. I mean, I think there is nuance to it as well because we're all very different. And I think this is where the piece of self-awareness is really nice and key
Mhm.
too, because of course we all have our own blind spots, but once we begin to know ourselves on a deeper level, we can understand like, oh, you know what, this is self-protecting and I'm pushing away something that I actually desire, or
Mhm.
I don't even really like to say self-sabotage. That's why I like to use self-protecting, because ultimately I think we're just protecting ourselves from the unknown or what could be. It's not like we actually want to sabotage and take ourselves down. But I think, for me, in terms of the neuroplasticity piece, consistency is key. And I would say, at the times when you are feeling resistant or feeling like, is this working, or questioning the process, really stopping and asking yourself, okay, where am I in the process? Have I manifested what I want? Could I maybe still show up for a meditation or a hypnosis, but maybe I need to tweak it a bit? It's just like kind of digging into what would that be. But I would say, yes, the consistency is so key because from a neuroplasticity point of view, we need that consistency and the repetition to rewire the pathways. And if we think about it, when we start going on this path of change, or when we're creating a change or desiring a change, we have been rehearsing certain mental and neural pathways for decades. It could be 3 decades, 4 decades, and it's not going to just change doing it twice. It does take that
Yeah.
consistency and repetition. And I'd say that's really for most things in life when we're creating change. If we're creating a workout routine, we're not going to go from couch potato to running a marathon, in like two runs. I mean, maybe, but it probably won't feel good on the body. So it's really conditioning the body, showing up consistently. And it's the same thing when whether it's, physically getting fit or mentally getting fit. It's just that consistency really is key.
But do you think that every modality works for everyone? Because
No.
there's a possibility. Tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that everyone, again, is unique. Everyone has different things that work. Everyone resonates with different things. And I don't think there is a one size fits all plan, especially when it comes to health, to healing. We're all different, even
Mhm.
just like composition wise, and there's also seasons. Like I'm thinking, say, food. Different diets work for different people. You might have a diet at one point in your life and then later transition and realize I need more of this type of thing, or I never used to eat this and now I need this. It's like we're always growing and evolving. And I think for me, that's why having a curious sense of mind and a curiosity is important, because we're then not so fixed with something. But again, like I think that once you follow your curiosity too, like if a certain healing modality is speaking to you and you're like, huh, I'm not really sure why this is calling my attention, but you allow yourself to explore it, there could be transformation, there could be healing, or you do it and you're like, meh, this is not for me. But I think that that's also what's so important about being our own advocate and knowing ourselves too, is allowing ourselves to try new things, or to also say, hey, this actually doesn't align with me, giving ourselves permission. And I would even say, working in the hospital taught me that you have to be your own advocate. And I would say that's not just in the healthcare system, it's in life, really trying things and saying, hey, that resonates with me, I'm going to try it, or that doesn't resonate with me. But then also being open to, well, is that because of a limiting belief or because I feel scared? There's layers to it all. It's never black or white.
I was just saying on my last podcast that I realized about regulating the nervous system that before I was, not that we're ever fully healed, but when I was really in an unhealed place, things that were right for me felt wrong, and things that were wrong for me felt right. So,
Yes.
how do we Is it just through the process of continuing to heal ourselves and look at ourselves?
Yeah, and again, I think that's for me why prioritizing the self is so important too, because like I'll use a personal example. In the past, I would often be attracted to partners who were not emotionally available.
Me
And
too.
yeah, you're, oh, surprise. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, right?
You're not
And
alone.
so, yeah, exactly. You're not alone. And I didn't realize this until I did, right? Until I started to look and say, what's going on? I see a pattern here. And then I also realized through doing my own work and having this self awareness, also working with coaches, mentors, therapists, all the things, okay, there's certain aspects of emotional unavailability that felt familiar to me. And again, when we look at the subconscious, familiar equals safe. Doesn't mean I actually want that, but that's what was familiar to me. And so then I had to say, okay, I actually want to call in someone who is emotionally available. And these are the ways these are the things and the ways I would desire for them to show up. And then starting to shift myself and the things that would make me a match for that, first of all, and then really going in deeper to say, okay, how can I, yes, soothe the nervous system, regulate the nervous system? Because then, say an emotionally available partner appears, it would feel so foreign to me. So
Yes.
it would have to, it feel right. It feels like strange or like, or someone who grew up in a chaotic environment, they could say they want peace, but maybe they go to nature for a weekend and they're like, this feels frightening because I'm not used to only hearing birds. I'm used to yelling or whatever they grew up with. And it does take conscious effort and reconditioning the mind and the body, all of it.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
So you're talking about journaling. I've tried it. It's one of those things that I thought never works for me because I thought it never went deep enough until again at one of your events following hypnosis, we journaled and I'm like, I don't know if you saw me, I was like trying not to cry as I was connecting with my inner child.
Hmm.
So what are your journaling practices? Can it really tap into our subconscious? Do we have to prime ourselves first?
Yeah, journaling is so powerful. And it's something, it's funny. Recently I found an old journal I had as a kid and I was like 10. And so it's something I've done for a long time. I mean, I wasn't consistent with it when I was little, but now I'm very consistent. As I said, it's a daily practice for me. And there's different ways we can tap into journaling and that modality. But I think when we just allow ourselves to quite literally like just write, almost like automatic writing without judging ourselves, we are sometimes, I would say a lot of the time, surprised at what comes down on paper. So it can serve for multiple ways. One, it can help us get clarity. One, it can help us clear out what we're holding on to because it physically pulls out this energy that we're holding in our body. Or maybe we get clarity on something that we're deciding to do. I love connecting to my future self. I also do gratitude in it. I also have done a practice. I do this once in a while. It's interesting. I don't remember where I first heard about this, but you might like this because of, I know you like doing inner child work also, where you basically use your dominant hand. So for me, it's my right hand. And I would ask, like, I call my inner child Tiny Tosh, and I would just say, like, how are you doing today? Or what's going on? And then I switch the pen to my non dominant hand and write as if I'm responding from my inner child. And it's really interesting, because you're switching also. So it's almost like two different versions of you using one hand versus the other. And then also because it's non-dominant, it does look like a child's writing, it comes out kind of shaky. But I've done that multiple times, and that's always really interesting. So there's so many ways to tap into journaling, but I find especially before doing whether it's a meditation, a hypnosis, or after, it does really allow you to connect to this inner wisdom within you. And sometimes it really is so surprising what comes out.
That sounds good. My regular handwriting looks like a kid though, so I don't know if I'll be able to read the second one.
Yeah, you can try it out and let me know.
So, okay, so next, you're always talking about like future self. How can we
Yeah.
connect to our future selves? Give us some tips.
Yes, good question. Yes, future self is one of my favorite things, and it can start small. Like maybe I have this like funny light beam going through my head for those who are, well, I don't
Maybe,
know if we're on video.
yeah,
We're gonna
we'll
be,
be on
yeah.
YouTube for all the
Oh,
youthful
okay,
people
cool.
out there.
Perfect. So I have this like light beam from the window. But yes, future self, we don't have to know all the pieces right away. I say maybe you just connect with the energy of your future self. Maybe you start to connect with him or her, them, and you know that they are a more peaceful version. And you just see that they operate from the energy of peace a lot more. And
Mm.
you can start to, yeah, you can, yeah, I see the shift already. You can just see, like, okay, if I'm showing up as a more peaceful version of myself, how would I talk to my partner? How would I go to work? And that already creates a shift.
Okay,
Yeah, what
every
came
time
through?
I
I
hang out
know.
with
It's like,
you,
what came through?
because when I was talking about the version of me that I dropped into when I dropped into a parallel timeline, which also when I did go back to Dispenza this morning, even though I took like a month off, this version of me, it's she almost, I don't want to say she scares me, but she doesn't seem like she's more empowered. And I think something
Mm,
I have been dealing with a lot lately is boundaries and getting better in that because
hmm
I think I've been a people pleaser for so long, being a
hmm
Libra, all that. This version of me is like more unapologetic. And there was
hmm
something about that that I think was frightening to me because of the people pleasing. But when you said that, I can feel the energy of how she just is unapologetic and she is
Yeah.
empowered and just being more that way instead of actually
hmm
thinking like what actions do I need to take? That's so powerful.
Yes, the energy again. And it's like, again, backwards to how we're taught. We're taught to do something, to fix something. And that's really coming from the masculine energy. And sometimes, of course, there's a time and place for both, but really working from the energy and really embodying that, which is feminine energy. And again, like it doesn't matter how you identify as a gender, we all have masculine and feminine energy, and we need both. But when we can operate from the energy, it's such a game changer. It's so different. And like you said, it's like she just is that. And so if she
Yeah.
just is that, she already has different habits. She has different ways of showing up. Her posture's different. The way she breathes is different. Like if you're showing up as a more empowered version of yourself, I'm already thinking she just stands taller. She's like more open-hearted. Her posture, like these things are different. When you stand like that, it also, your body communicates to your mind. It's like, oh, we're empowered. I'm going to ask this person a question or ask for this opportunity. It just has a ripple effect.
Like the Wonder Woman pose. Have you heard about that?
Yeah,
People that
power
stand
pose.
the power pose.
Yeah. Yeah, Wonder Woman pose, power pose, exactly. And that's scientifically proven too. Like you have a job interview. I had a client once and she was going through a series of interviews and I said, if you have 5 minutes before the interview, go in a private bathroom stall, just stand like this and you'll start to feel more confident. And she did it and she got the job.
Ah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, the final question I like to ask everyone is
Ooh.
what is like the most interesting or weirdest woo-woo spiritual thing that's happened to you, experience that you've had, if you
This
can
is a
think of
good
just one.
question. I know, this is good. I don't know if this is like the weirdest, but I feel like, okay, I don't know if I'll do that one. I just feel for me, I was like, I'm trying to
Tell me
think.
later.
I feel like I was like, there's so many. I feel for me, they all tend to do with people coming into my life synchronistically. Like I just couldn't make that up, how they pop in. And one that's coming to me is one of the first coaches I worked with. It was right after I traveled in Central America in that year. That was really challenging. And I came back and thought, okay, I want to start shifting. I want to be a coach. I want to get a coach myself to work with.
Hmm.
And I was really putting this energy out. And on that trip that I was in Central America, I'd met people from all over. And I was going to pick up someone who I met on the trip. We were going to go hiking. And I was, putting out this energy. And we went to hike the Hollywood sign. And at the top of the sign, there was this couple, Australian couple, and we started talking. And that guy at the top of the Hollywood sign, Brandon, ended up being my coach because he's like, I'm a coach, this and that. And I was like, what? And we just really hit it off. And I'm like, who would guess that I would meet my coach at the top of the Hollywood sign? And so
Oh my
it's just
God,
really
that is
interesting.
so funny.
Yeah, right. And so I'm like, well, it really is a testament to and a reminder for me when you put yourself in places that are aligned, that you love, you're doing your thing, the universe really does send you, like in quotes, people, the divine opportunities. And again, it's the energy. I feel like that's the theme of today, but it's like because I was in that energetic, then I attracted in someone who was also in that energetic.
You just reminded me of something that I texted myself that had you in it. That is exactly
Ooh.
that. Okay, so you said when we're
So
going
this is our woo, this is our thing, yeah.
this is our
This is
woo-woo
yours.
thing. Okay, so you know how like you said when you're going to sleep or you're waking up, your mo are open. So I often get
Yes.
downloads. I was going to
Yes.
sleep and you flashed into my mind and I wrote that I'm not attracting anything. I'm creating new people, experiences, and new vibrations based on my frequencies, what I've believed and what I've released and what I'm believing. Like even
Hmm.
you coming into my life as a friend and like I think that's why you and the experiences the events I've gone to, I feel
Yeah.
like we're not we're like creating it based on our belief. It was just this feeling of like based on our frequency, like you created that guy in a way. Like yeah, he exists, but like
Yeah.
does
It was
he?
like I magnetized. Right, exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah, like
magnetized it. I brought it in. Yeah.
or there's multiple versions of each person. I believe that there's like
Hmm.
parallel universes and you
Multiple
are
timelines.
multiple timelines you're creating the timeline of that person that was a coach or
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, like
yeah
we could say, and that we could even say that too with like, okay, my future self, future Tosh, she's already, just say doing another retreat right now, like in a parallel universe in another timeline, she's already doing that. And so then that allows me to also think too, in terms of embodying her, okay, what would help me bridge that gap? Like she already lives within me essentially, but what would help bridge the gap between where I am and where she is? It's like, oh, maybe that means, giving myself more space in my schedule to look or dream about the next retreat, whatever that might be, but to just see like, how can I start to align with that energy of the future self and start to embody that? And that closes the gap. But yeah, I would say that there are multiple timelines happening and parallel universes happening at the same time.
I love that. Well, I'm going to link all your info in the show notes, but please tell
Thank
people
you.
where to find you also if they want to work with you, if they want to go to one of your amazing events and
Yes,
listen to
thank
your
you. Thank you.
podcast.
Yes, thank you. And I'm so grateful that we got connected and that you had me on and that we live in close proximity to each other so that you can attend my events. They've been, yeah, just so fulfilling to have you there. But the best way to connect with me is Instagram. I'm at the Nurtured Nurse on Instagram. And then, yes, my podcast actually, as we're recording this, the first episode just came out today. So that's very exciting. But the podcast is called Next Level Self. And I dive in more about future self, how to become the next version of yourself, the importance of prioritizing the self, and how to live authentically and in alignment. And then my website is www.thenurturednurse.co. And those are the best ways to find me.
And I will link everything in the show notes. Tosh, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I feel like I learned something today, which is always fun.
Yes, thank you. I always love sharing time and space and energy with you, and I always leave feeling very generator fulfilled and energized. So thank you.
Me too. Thanks so much. Have a beautiful
Thank
week.
you.